Good evening, everyone, and happy Sabbath. Good to see you all. Are you enjoying the seminar during the week? Very good, very informative, very educational, because the health message is important, isn't it? And what does Ellen White say about the health message? That it's the right arm of the gospel. And what does that mean? What does that mean, that it's the right arm of the gospel? That's right. It's an entering wedge for people that are non-believers. Everyone's interested in health. So we need to preach the health message in order to get other people in. And we thank Dr. Ramirez for being here with us. We've got an international speaker here with us. So we're very blessed to have him. And just put your phones on silent, please. And any questions, we'll leave them to the end of the second session. We'll have light refreshments in between. So if you've got any questions, keep them in mind, and we'll ask the doctor at the end of the session. So let's pray before we begin. Dear Heavenly Father, merciful and gracious God, thank you for this Sabbath day. We come into the sacred hours of the week. Help us to rest in you. Help us to rest in your word. And help us to get insight into the health message. Please speak through Dr. Ramirez. Please be with him, bless his family and his ministry. And help us to understand the message. And not only to understand it, but to incorporate it into our daily lives. So we can have healthy minds, healthy bodies, so we can glorify you in this world. So we ask all these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. All yours, Doctor.
Gracias. Well, it's been a week that we have been learning quite a bit, and we still have quite a bit to learn. So let me just connect this screen right in here. Very good. Let me see, give me one little second. That second screen, I don't think is mine. Back in the audio, can somebody mention to him? He needs to switch my screen. I don't think that is mine. Yeah, that's not mine. He needs to switch the screen. So if you can switch the input. Let's see. And let me just confirm. Yep. Let me see something here. Yeah, see, that's not my screen. It's another screen, the one that is there. So you need to switch the projector to the screen here. Just give me just a moment. Not yet. Oh, there. Okay. Oh, very good. The one in the back is the one that is not coordinated. Okay. Well, I have studied hydrotherapy and published quite a bit of studies about it. And this is one of my latest studies. And by some reason, it's quite zoomed the screen. Do you know why? So this should be like a little bit smaller. Let's see if we can figure out here. And still, the one in the back still is. Okay. Let's see, display settings. And extend. If not, we do the double one. Let me try this one again. Yeah, now it's good. The back still is not connected. Eh? So yeah, I was in Finland with my family, and we went and did a sauna bath. So after the sauna, this is what we did. We went outside where there was a snow there. And you can see it was in the middle of the winter. And you can see there my daughter. And you can see my other daughter. And that water is about to be frozen. It's like 1 or 2 degrees. Look at that. Boom. And then my wife. And that's me. Boom. For the people in Finland, this is the definition of something fun to do. No? So I actually have a study, a video in my YouTube channel. You can see a little bit there of a different class there on the hydrotherapy. Reminder what we're talking about and we were learning. You can find it there on the book Pandemic Busters. And my research is found on that ResearchGate. There's also the Twitter account. There is the YouTube page and also the Instagram page. A few of the things I put on my Twitter account. This one about the music, how music stimulates the brain. Excellent way of keeping your brain stimulated through music. This other one about paleo diet. How this paleo diet just makes you more sick. When we measure, people are eating that type of diet, the paleo high protein type of approach. When you measure the markers of disease, they are very high on those people following that, increasing the risk of all kinds of cardiovascular problems. This one, eating junk food during adolescent years may lead to long-term irreversible memory problem. Do not reward your children with junk food. Some parents do that mistake. Reward them with good food. That's how we need to reward them. Like somebody very kind today, reward me with that. It brought me a big plate with all kinds of fruits and things, you know. Now that's what we call a good reward. This one interesting from Harvard University, how as church attendance has gone down, mental health has increased proportionately. Very, very interesting. And it's very true. You go to the most secular countries, you find the most mental health problems. I was just in China, very secular country, lots and lots of mental health problems there. This one, the ideal time that you should be spending outside. And in this study, they say 67 minutes, and I happen to agree with that. You know, 67 minutes is a good exposure to that bright light and has all kinds of benefits. So let's talk about stopping the number one killer. So we have an interesting system in our body called the lymphatic system in our body. And this lymphatic system, there's many people that have problems with this. A very common symptom among patients are when those legs start to get swollen. Very, very common symptom. And this very interesting system is a system that is parallel to your blood vessels and helps move some of that liquid inside our body due to exercise, due to gravity, and due to massage. That's how we're going to move that lymph system. So what happens is that if there is too much liquid in the system, it's going to start leaking out of the blood vessels, and it end up in that lymphatic system. And this is something very common that you see as the disease advances of the veins. The veins have a mechanism so that they can move blood upwards. But when those blood vessels get damaged, then the veins start to get bigger, and we end up with what we call the varicose veins. And you don't solve this, then now the liquid starts to leak out, and now you end up with edema. You know, it gets full of fluid. And then if you don't fix that, then now you start seeing colors, different colors and so forth. And the things start getting worse and worse. And this is what people end up with secondary to that leakage of that fluid. So what we are learning is something very, very interesting. This is one of the latest things. We're not going to go into detail about this, but this is one of the latest discoveries. So what we're finding out is that there is this gel-like material called the glycocalyx. And the reason why the people end up with those tremendously swollen legs is because that glycocalyx gets damaged. Your lifestyle, your diet, your lack of exercise, and many factors can damage that glycocalyx. And unless you help the body rebuild that glycocalyx, you're not going to solve that swelling. So that's why even people that have problems with like ulcers and so forth, you have to solve that glycocalyx problem if you want to reverse that ulcer. So that glycocalyx is extremely important in keeping things where they belong. As long as the glycocalyx is intact, the fluid is going to have a hard time getting out of those blood vessels. But when that glycocalyx is being damaged, then that's when the leakage takes place. So that glycocalyx has all kinds of beneficial effects. And what we are learning is that if you want to help the problems of circulation, you need to work at rebuilding that glycocalyx. But you know, there's another system in our body that is causing even more problems, and that is our venous system, where the blood goes out of the heart. Like my friend, he happened to have that problem. He had heart disease, younger than me, and a couple of years ago had his second heart attack. He did not survive it. So this is the problem with heart disease. We need to understand that the decisions that we take have consequences even if we don't like it. It's just the way that it works. And you can see worldwide, what is the problem? You can summarize it in 2 words. Heart disease. Including Australia. How is it going with Australia? Heart disease. There's this interesting study that was done. They not only detected what was the problem, but what caused the problem. Wouldn't it be a good idea to find that out? Notice what caused those people to die. It included tobacco. Can you stop smoking? Yes or no? Yes. And even more impactful, poor diet and inactivity. Can we start doing more exercise? Can we change our diet? Yes or no? In other words, if you were to just work on that one, look at the tremendous amounts of heart attacks that you would prevent. More than half of them just by starting to do exercise and changing our diet. And lastly, alcohol. So as you can see, all those little blue left, those are the ones that should have occurred if we had good lifestyle. In other words, we're getting sick and dying of things we should be preventing. And we have the knowledge, and I'm glad that you guys are here, so you can learn what things we need to make changes. So the problem is that we're seeing this heart disease in younger and younger population. 19-year-old kid, already he has heart disease. You can see him there. The heart disease is quite present. So here, this buildup there is heart disease. And more worrisome, this lady, 33 years old, half her artery of the heart is already damaged. Is that good or bad? Bad. If she keeps doing what she's been doing, she is going to end up with a stroke or a heart attack in just a few years. And the problem? No symptoms. This lady doesn't know that she is in really, really big trouble. So there's another one here among young people, 20 to 32 years of age, showing that 78% of them already have heart disease. Is that good? No, I mean, they're just starting the life and they already have this problem. Sadly, this is something very common here in Australia and the Western world. Almost all persons have aortic fatty streaks by the age of 10. The mummies in Egypt, they had similar problems to what we are facing today in society. What problem this one has? Obesity, cavities, gallbladder stones, cancer, and sadly, heart disease. This lady is pulling from that heart that plaque that accumulated in those blood vessels. So this is the way that it works. As the arteries start to get damaged, when there is a complete blockage, depending where it happened, if it happens at the level of the heart, that's what we call a heart attack. And if that happens at the level of the brain, that is a stroke. And there's a special experimental surgery that can be done. They open the chest and look at what is going to come out of those blood vessels. See that junk that is coming out of there? That is that atherosclerosis. That is the blockage that occurs in the vessels of the heart. Those are the ones that predispose to the heart disease or the stroke when that happens more at the level of the brain. And I'm glad you're here today because we're going to be learning how we can tackle this. And the Lord will take away from you all sickness and will afflict none of the terrible diseases of Egypt which you have known, but would lay them on all those who hate you. And this is a big problem also in places like the Pacific Islands. I wanted to highlight this one. You can see here 99.9, not even 99.0, but 99.9 of Tongans engage in behaviors that puts them at risk for developing these chronic diseases. Chronic diseases are the diseases such as heart attacks, strokes, diabetes, hypertension, damage to the articulations, and so forth. Now, this is not only the Tongans. This is a reflection of the multiple islands of the Pacific. You can make that. And one of the big problems, it's here. The screen right now is a little bit too zoom, but this one is an article from BBC News. And the title is, How Mutton Flaps Are Killing Tonga. And the article continues, the Pacific island of Tonga is the most obese country in the world. Up to 40% of the population is thought to have type 2 diabetes, and life expectancy is falling. One of the main causes is a cheap, fatty kind of meat, mutton flaps, imported from New Zealand. As the Fijians, that stuff arrives there. As the Samoans, that stuff arrives there. And all these islands are flooded with this thing, which is causing tremendous health problems. So among the things that can increase this risk for heart disease include smoking and alcohol, high blood pressure, sedentary behavior, overweight, and poor food. That's the bad news. The good news is that these things are changeable, yes or no? You can start doing exercise, you can start losing weight, you can start changing your diet. Every one of those factors are potentially reversible. And when I went to Tonga, I was surprised to see, so many people shortening their lives due to poor behaviors. And it shouldn't be like that. Sadly, Australia is not immune. Nearly 1 in 5 Australians have cardiovascular disease. 50,000 Australians have reported to have a heart attack at some point. Cardiovascular disease causes what percentage? 30%. That's a big, big number if you consider from many things that you could die, lots of people die of heart disease. And you can see here the statistics of in Australia, coronary artery disease, both males and females are not immune. And then you have the dementia, which also quite linked to the issues of the blood vessels. And then you have those strokes as the third cause there. And who gets the problem? As people age and age and age, the risk goes higher and higher and higher. So that's why medications like the famous Viagra are such a big sellers. See, when the blood vessels that go to the male organ start to get clogged, there's not enough blood flow arriving there, the male is going to experience sexual problems secondary to that. No wonder why this is a super seller worldwide, because you saw that heart disease is, the #1 killer in many, many places around the world. Therefore, a good physician knows that when a person starts to get this type of symptoms, they better get on the ball, because not only there is clogging of the arteries down there, but it's also a reflection of the arteries of the heart, of the neck, and so forth. So a few years later, the heart attack is coming very soon, unless they make intensive lifestyle changes. So as you saw, we were talking about this previously, how this patient was able to reverse his metabolic problems by changing the way he was living. It is a very similar story with heart disease. And the problem is that the area of the body that gets disease is this area called the endothelium. Think about them. You have a blood vessel. We cut that blood vessel. That outermost layer, that's the endothelium. That's what gets sick. As this researcher says, we age at the same rate that our endothelium does. And the reason being is the following. Here's a blood vessel. If the endothelium, which is here, imagine, if it gets clogged by that atherosclerosis, the one you saw that they pull out of that heart, oxygen as well as nutrients, they need to cross to reach to the organs. But if this is clogged, what's going to happen? Not enough nutrients, not enough oxygen, not enough ability to remove the toxins. So what end up happening? You are going to end up aging faster than what you should because your organs are not getting that nutrition that you need. And one of the worst culprits of this is something called oxidized cholesterol. We'll come back to that oxidized cholesterol in a moment. So here's what happens. It's like the roads here in Australia. I've seen this many times. You're driving, and there's a police there with this thing they're measuring the speed. Have you seen those people? And if you're going too fast, boom, they'll get you there, right there. Same story in your blood vessels. Around your blood vessels, you have immune cells that are keeping an eye on the side of the blood vessel. And anytime you eat oxidized cholesterol, that stuff is so toxic, the immune system will eat it so that it can protect you, but it's so toxic that it accumulates on the side of the blood vessel. Now, if you're going to do this once a year, it's not that big of a deal once a year. But breakfast with oxidized cholesterol, lunch with oxidized cholesterol, supper with oxidized cholesterol, what are you doing? You're causing major damage to your blood vessels because that stuff starts to accumulate around your blood vessels and you start clogging in your blood vessels in your whole system. It's not only in the heart, but in the whole system. So instead of having nice and smooth blood vessels, you have all these peaks and valleys that start interrupting the normal blood flow, and that causes all kinds of problems. So here is the problem. The problem is that clogging in starts to occur from very, very young age. And the sad part is that there is no symptoms. Not until you have clogging in of 70 or 80% of the blood vessel, that's when you start having the symptoms. And that symptoms, you find this heaviness in the chest and lack of air and so forth. Once those start, the heart attack and the stroke are just around the corner. That's why you shouldn't wait until you start getting the symptoms to start making the changes. It can be too late. You need to start ASAP. So, another very interesting discovery that was done recently is how the bacteria in our gut has to do with heart disease. See, if you're a regular eater of animal products, chicken, beef, and so forth, your bacteria in your gut starts changing. So anytime you eat meat, it damages very much your blood vessels because of the bacteria that you have in your gut. But if you are on a whole food, plant-based diet, and once a year or something you eat some meat, it's not that big of a deal because the bacteria in your gut actually protects you against some of that damage to your blood vessels. Very interesting, isn't it? Very, very interesting. And no question about it. The more the cholesterol, the more the risk for heart disease. So where do we find the cholesterol? It's very simple. You don't need to learn the whole list. If it comes from animals, it has cholesterol. If it has a mommy and a daddy, it has cholesterol. If it has a face, it has cholesterol. Simple, isn't it? Have you ever seen a face on a banana or a tomato? No, those things don't have a face. So there is this very interesting paper that was published in one of the top journals in the world by Dr. Dean Ornish. The name of the study is called the Lifestyle Trial. And in this study, they were trying to measure what happens when you change your lifestyle. And what they found out is that if you follow very carefully the diet that they prescribe in many places, I don't know if you ever heard about that diet. You're going to eat low-fat dairy, and you're going to eat white meats. Have you heard that proposed diet? In this study, they had one group following very religiously that diet, no deviance. They were very, very careful. And when they followed them up, it found out that 79% of the people following that diet, heart disease kept getting worse and worse and worse. So does it work? It doesn't work very well. In fact, when they started measuring things, they found out that year after year after year, after 10 years, 85% of them, their blood vessels got more and more and more damage. Would that be good? No, isn't it? That is not good for the patient. Compared to a second group. There was a second group that was dealing with the root cause of the problem. It's like this illustration. Suppose that your faucet breaks and starts pouring the water on the ground. Now, we can solve this problem two ways. One, we can buy the most expensive mop in the market, and we're going to be pulling the water and water and water and water. We kind of solved the problem, but it's a never-ending problem. Yes or no? I think, in my opinion, it would be a better idea to solve the root cause of the problem, which is the blood vessel, which is the fix that water from pouring out. And that is exactly the approach of lifestyle medicine. So, in that same study, they had a second group that did the following: was following a whole food, plant-based diet whose cholesterol was only 5 milligrams or less. Learn that number. 5 milligrams or less of cholesterol. The other group was following at 250 milligram cholesterol a day. This one, 5 or less milligrams of cholesterol. Notice what happens if you're able to do that. Those patients, when they checked them, 82% of them, the blood vessels started to heal, the arteries started to open up. Is that good or bad? Very good, isn't it? While 14%, at least the thing was not getting worse, which is actually good news. And only 4% actually started getting worse and worse and worse. This one, the problem was not the diet. These people have probably an emotional, spiritual problem, hate, and this type of emotions in the long term will actually give you heart disease. We even have a saying that says, heart problems start with heart problems. So yes, you also need to deal with that aspect of things. And you can see here the top 10 groups that you need to be avoiding if you don't want to have problems with dementia and heart disease. Processed foods, processed meats, red meat, chicken, which is the main source of cholesterol in the Western world, butter and margarine, fried food and fast food, cheese, pastries and sweets, sugary drinks, and alcohol. So, if we said, how many milligrams? 5 or less are going to help me. Let's go and see how much cholesterol is in food so we know what foods we should be avoiding and what foods we should be eating. So as a general rule, if it comes from plants, it doesn't have cholesterol. Cream, light, How many milligrams? Is that less than 5 or more than 5? More than 5. It will damage the artery. Milk, 2%. 18. Whole milk, 33. Continues. Mayonnaise, 8. Ice cream, 29. Butter, 31. 1 egg. How much cholesterol? You're eating the cholesterol for the whole month in just 1 egg. That is too much cholesterol. In fact, Harvard University has done studies showing that eating eggs is equivalent as smoking at how much damage to your blood vessels you cause by consuming them. Continues with tuna, clams, crab. And then here is the myth. Some people think that chicken grows on trees. No, it is not part of the vegetable world. I have bad news for you. Chicken with no skin, how much? What about pork? How much? Is there much difference? In fact, beef, 80, chicken with the skin, how much? No wonder why the patient comes frustrated and says, "Doctor, I'm eating so much chicken that I'm even growing feathers under my arms." And I don't understand why my cholesterol doesn't come down. It's not going to go down. It's too much cholesterol. How much we need it? 5 or less. Then we have oysters, sardines, shrimp, 162, beef kidneys, 329, beef liver, 410, caviar, 500, and the food with the most cholesterol, 1,697, the beef brains. In Mexico, they like to eat the beef brain taco. I tell my friends, don't eat this food, or you're going to acquire the intelligence of the cow. Don't eat this stuff. It's too much cholesterol. And as a general rule, foods that come from internal organs are very high in cholesterol. The same story with the tripe, the same story with the stomach, the same story with the kidneys and so forth. They're all mega loaded with cholesterol. So yesterday we were talking about the toxins, isn't it? We're talking about the aspect of the fish and how that had many problems on health. And what people don't understand is that these things have major implications. In this study, it was found that people with higher mercury levels at the level of the placenta, that baby had higher risk for a neural tube defect. I mean, this is a serious condition. We're talking about, tremendous problem. One of the many reasons why ladies that are about to give birth or that are in the process of getting pregnant, they should be avoiding these mercury sources. This other one, 1,820 infants born to mothers who consume that PCB contaminated fish from Lake Ontario, it found a major increase in malformations. Again, the same story. So not only the mercury, but some of the toxins that fish contain. This other one, this study, it was found that exposure to methyl mercury through eating well meat and fish has increased the risk for neurodevelopmental deficits. Another one, this one is the one that we're talking about. Remember yesterday we were talking about those persistent toxins, those dioxins and dioxylase compounds found on fish. They found that increased the risk of issues with congenital problems. And it's another one, and another one, and another one, and another one. So it's not just one isolated study there. It is the reality of exposing yourself to these things. This one, very interesting study. This is from the New England Journal of Medicine, one of the top journals in the world, showing that that milk from cows is not an essential nutrient. For some people, they think that, oh, if I'm not going to eat this, man, I'm going to go deficient. And that's what this is showing. Instead, you can choose the milk of your choice that comes from plants and compare it in the bottom with cow's milk. Notice that the profile is actually quite similar. So go ahead and find a good substitute and switch that cow's milk for something more healthy without cholesterol. So the problem is going to be the saturated fat found on beef, pork, chicken, butter, cheese, tropical oil like coconut oil and palm oil. I want to avoid those. That's one of the reasons why that coconut oil is no good, because it's so saturated. And the hydrogenated oils and trans fats found in some baked goods. If you read in the label, partially hydrogenated oil, avoid that stuff. That stuff causes damage to your blood vessels. Margarine, fried foods, and partially hydrogenated oils. Do not eat, it's interesting to me how in the Bible it says this, do not eat any of the fat of the cattle, the sheep, or the goats. Is there? Avoid that fat, because that fat, remember what type we said it is? Saturated fat. That's the fat that damages your blood vessels. How did Moses know this 3,500 years ago? When we didn't even know about the monounsaturated and the polyunsaturated and the saturated. Man, he was like way, ahead of everybody else. Even the American Heart Association finally is getting on the ball. Look at this. It's promoting what we've been learning the whole week. It says, he calls it the Life Simple 7. Keep your bad cholesterol LDL low. Your blood sugar under control. Eat a plant-based diet. Do you see there? The carrot, the apple, the cherries. Keep your weight under control. Do your exercise. Stop smoking. And keep your blood pressure under control. Did you know that 80% of cardiac events can be prevented through educational and lifestyle changes, says the American Heart Association? And that is the reality, as we saw in the other statistic. We can avoid the majority of these health problems by changing what we're eating. And here's the good news. Look at this one. So this person here, which happens to be actually a physician, he was really sick. You can see the blood vessel is open and then suddenly becomes thin because there's plaque here and here of that atherosclerosis. Here is the same patient 32 months later. What pill did he take? No pill. It says there, 32 months on a plant-based diet without cholesterol-lowering medication. This is Dr. Caldwell S. Steele. I'm co-author with him in a nutrition book. So, as you can see, it's possible to start that process of healing. Here's another one. You can see that the blood vessel becomes more closed and then open up 60 months, this patient. This other one is nice and thick and then becomes thin because of the atherosclerosis. 60 months later, that artery healed. Here's another one. It's so clogged, it almost disappears. 60 months later, the vessel heals again. I've done studies on the subject. This is one of my studies. In this study, we're documenting that people that are starting to have the symptoms of heart disease, in a matter of days, we can lower those cholesterol, that blood pressure, and help them lose weight to help them go on the way to recovery. This is another one of my studies, fascinating study. We did a study that showed that these patients definitely had a problem with heart disease. Their arteries were clogged. 18 days later, after they changed their lifestyle, we repeat the same study, And we're showing here that in only 18 days, 48% of them went into the healing process. In only 18 days, the test results shows us that there was more blood flow arriving to that heart, meaning that the arteries were in that process of healing. That's how fast you start seeing the symptoms improve after making those dietary and lifestyle changes. So, in this study, we're showing what are the most harmful types of cholesterol. Custard mixes. We'll come back to custard mixes in a moment. Also, pancake mixes, Parmesan, and lard. What has more cholesterol? Cow's milk or human milk? Anybody knows? Human milk actually has more cholesterol, but it's never oxidized. When you take the cholesterol out in the open air, that's when it oxidizes, and that's the cholesterol that causes harm. That's why best food for the baby, mother's milk. It comes out straight off the breast to his mouth, no oxidation whatsoever, no damage to those arteries. But what do we do with the cows? Take out the milk, oxidize it, then we drink it. That's a bad idea. So if you want cow's milk without cholesterol, damaging oxidized cholesterol, what do? You hang from there. Now, because of hygiene, may not be the best thing to do. So as you can see, we can defeat this enemy by the name of heart disease. It's a matter of stopping the damage, and then you will come into that healing, reversing disease stage by continuing that positive lifestyle changes. Let's go ahead and take a break, and we'll continue after the break for the second part. Javier?
Thank you very much, Doctor. Very informative. So what's the number one killer in Australia? Heart disease. And how can we reverse it or prevent it? What diet should we be on? Whole food, plant-based diet. That's the best diet. I forgot to mention earlier, Pastor Darren Slade couldn't be with us tonight. He's at the Mac Church at the MacArthur Adventist College. That's why I've taken over. So we'll have 15 minutes and we'll come back. We'll pray for the food. Dear Heavenly Father, please bless the food we're about to eat. Bless the hands that have made it. And please help it to be good nourishment to our bodies so we can have healthy bodies and healthy minds. We ask this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Okay, thank you.
Good to see you again, yes.
I hope that the refreshments were good, and let's try and keep everything in our minds. If we've got any questions, we ask them at the end of the session. So we'll give it back to Dr. Ramirez. Thank you.
Okay, well, we're going to cover also quite a bit of ground today. And reminder, lots of the things that we're talking about, you find them there on that Pandemic Busters. It's not for sale today, but if you're interested, let us know, and you can acquire it later. A few things that I put in my Twitter lately. This one very interesting. Omega-3 and vitamin D in 3 years, or taking that, slows down the biological aging. And if you combine it with exercise, it works even better. This other one, how there's something called health span. Health span is how long you're going to live healthy. And lifespan is how long you're going to live, period. And there's another one now, strength span, how long you're going to live strong. So the people that are more strong tend to live longer. One of the reasons why you need to start building your upper body muscles, because it affects your mortality. This one, strength training keeps metabolism elevated up to 48 hours. Going 2 days without strength training will lose its effect. And for a minimum of 3 strength sessions per week, with no more than 2 days of rest. So if your goal is to get stronger, only 2 days, more than 2 days is no good, because you're losing some of the gains that you achieve. This one very interesting also. The levels of energy that you have, you inherit that from your mom, Interesting. So if your mom was the energetic type and so forth, you're going to be the energetic type. So you find those there in that Twitter account and many more every day. We put something new there to motivate you to do those positive lifestyle changes. So let's talk about microplastics and health. This is such an important topic and very, very current. So we call microplastic when you have a plastic less than 5 millimeters. And those things can come from all kinds of sources, from the water, from the bristles of the toothbrush, from bottle caps, from the degradation of plastics. And we also have not only microplastics, we have nanoplastics. Some of them as small as 0.001 nanometer. And the problem is that these things keep on increasing. We're not seeing a decrease, we're seeing an increase of those microplastics. And how do we get those microplastics? Through food that we eat, through water, especially in the bottled water, even the air, especially polluted places or places they process things, sometimes they release those things, and also through your skin. Look at this one. How microplastics in brain are rapidly rising in this tweet that I put there. And you can see there the comparison between 2024 to 2016. In fact, there was just a study that came out this week showing that they found this pattern. People that develop Alzheimer's tend to have higher than normal microplastics in the brain. And notice they go all over the place, the liver, the kidney, and many other places. Some people say, oh, it's fine. I ate that when I was a kid. No, you didn't. I mean, the Gatorade you were eating, it was drinking from, it was not plastic, it was glass. And look at the number of ingredients. 1, 2, 3, 4, that's it. Look at today. They have all kinds of things added, which is not the best. As a general rule, if you don't know what it is, don't drink it. As simple as that. Here's another one, peanut butter. It was just peanuts, salt, sugar. That's it. Look at that. Today, all kinds of things, and hydrogenated oils. Don't consume hydrogenated oils. Those are the ones we're talking about that can cause heart disease. So buy the peanut butter that is just the peanuts that are grinded. Our brains are filling with more and more microplastics. Microplastics have crossed the blood-brain barrier, and their numbers are rising. That is very, very concerning. In fact, studies show that you eat a credit card size of plastics every single week. Is that going to be good? No. Well, that's why I'm glad that you're here this evening, so you can become wise and you can start avoiding some of those sources of microplastics. Who is polluting the most? Here are the countries that are polluting the most, according to this latest study. China, by far the number one, followed by Indonesia, the Philippines, Vietnam, Sri Lanka. And the problem, if you notice, all those are relatively close to Australia. And that's not good, because then the currents come here and they start polluting the waters on this side of the world. In fact, it's interesting. There was a study that found that fish that are fish in New Zealand, 70% of them have microplastics. So again, that's not the best thing. You go and eat that, you eat those microplastics. This one, the 95% of plastic polluting the world's ocean comes from 10 rivers. That is the majority of the microplastics that are arriving to us. So you can see it's Asia and basically Africa, the two biggest culprits of that. Scientists estimate that an average people ingest up to 5 grams of microplastics each week. And that is basically the weight of a credit card. That is not good. And those micro and nanoplastics, you start putting them in the water, therefore the fish consume them, then the birds consume them, then we consume them, and especially things that are in the very bottom, the clams and so forth, they also start absorbing those microplastics, and we end up harming many, many things. Plastic accumulates in our organs and our tissues. Another one of my tweets, microplastic pollution has a history of 20 years ago. It could double by 2040. They come from multiple sources and are environmental micropollutants. It has been detected in multiple human tissues. So, from plastic pellets, some of the personal care, plastics, synthetic textiles, tires. If you live near a street where cars are circulating, you are breathing microplastics. Plastics have been found in human brains. In fact, today, the average brain has 0.05% of the whole weight of that brain is microplastic. You think that's good? No, isn't it? That plastic should not be in that brain. Popular Science, one surface crack on a Teflon-coated pan releases about 9,100 plastic particles. Should something break the coating, around 2,300,000 microplastics and nanoplastics may be released and potentially find their way into food. So that's why we need to be very careful what we use as cooking, because many of those layers that people add so things don't stick can have tremendous amounts of microplastics. And they're finding also even in semen the microplastics, and that's not good. That's why in this study it was shown that microplastic is related to decrease in that sperm count, which will translate into problems with fertility and also potentially, malformations and so forth. So this is the thing. Plastics, they add things to them to make them more hard, to make them more soft. So among those additives, you find the BPA, BPS, phthalates, and so forth. So these chemicals, the problem is that when your body takes them, it interprets them like hormones and so forth, and you end up disturbing multiple functions inside your body. So they can cause reproductive problems, and also the brains of these, especially children, they cannot develop properly, and you end up having neurodevelopmental issues. So how do they enter the body, this microplastic? Through things like oral ingestion. You eat them, or you can also breathe them and then enter the lung, and then the lung absorbs them and send them to the rest of your body. Microplastic enter orally, bottled water, tap water, even the plastic in your tubes. We'll talk about a little bit what can you do about that. And packaged foods, and contaminated by soil and bacteria. So these microplastics, so you have the nanoplastics, you have the microplastics, you have the mesoplastics, and you have the macroplastics. So usually they come a little bit bigger, but through the waves and the motion start to break down and break down and break down, start getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Microplastics are inhaled if you are in a busy place with lots of cars, and also synthetic clothing. Watch out, you're drying in the dryer your synthetic clothing. That actually releases a ton of those microplastics. And this other interesting study showing that toxicity is actually quite harmful to multiple systems, because you actually increase 4 potential pathways to cancer by dust overload, oxidative stress, translocation, and cytotoxicity. And this one also, how your digestive tract, when it arrives, the plastic there, your digestive tract absorbs it and sends it to the circulation, and that microplastic ends up somewhere in your body, as well as your lungs. As the lungs, the microplastic land in the lung, it will be absorbed and put in the rest of the body. And this other one also, how what we are eating has a potential effect. So especially worrisome things like seafood, increasing tremendous the levels of microplastics. And that's why in my book, Pandemic Busters, I actually have a chapter number 9 where I deal with those fabrics that are not the best for you. And the reason being is because they're very high in plastics. Your body can actually absorb some of that plastic just the fact that you have it in your skin. And especially worrisome when you wash them and when you dry them, they release a ton of microplastics because of that process. And the plastics that are inhaled through plastics that are become airborne, and all those microplastics in the lungs, in the food, in the skin, and so forth start to accumulate. So where have we found some of those microplastics? Lungs, liver, heart, brain, reproductive organs, and worrisome, the placenta. That is very, very worrisome. When the microplastics go all the way on the placenta, now we're talking about, a potential harm to that baby in the future. So what ended up happening? We expose ourselves, we inhale, we ingest, we touch those microplastics. then they get absorbed, and then they end up in multiple different organs, and then depending where they end up is what we are going to see. And this is an ongoing thing that we are just learning, about these microplastics. So the issue is that nanoplastics can trigger inflammation in the body, which can trigger infertility, which can trigger cancer. And that's why we don't want too much of those microplastics in our body. So what can they do? Well, from problems in the head, from your eyes to your brain, to your digestive tract, to your skin, all those things are affected. So those microplastics are the ones that break down. 70% come from degradation, and the rest are micro things that they add to things like cosmetics, fibers, and plastics. Average person inhales or consumes 120,000 microplastics per year. Water, bottled water, food, and so forth are the sources. Other microplastic sources include seafood, certain fruits and vegetables that they add or that they put in plastic things, not the best thing to do. Utensils also, think about it. That knife, plastic knife that you have, man, as you're cutting, don't you think that there's some things that are releasing there? That plastic spoon that you're putting in your mouth and in your teeth, you're grinding it. Don't you think you're going to release some microplastics there? And cups, baby bottles. This study on tap water, very interesting study, it was showing that it accounts to 220,000 to 1.2 million microplastic particles per year. Especially worrisome is when that plastic bottle is left out in the sun, like in the car and so forth. That is a really, really bad idea. Heat releases a ton of those microplastics. So here is this study about bottled water. Just drinking bottled water, if you just drink that, will increase to 90,000 more microplastics in addition to the other microplastics that you have. So one thing that we can do is install a reverse osmosis filter. That's what the research showed, that decreases the most the microplastics. And that bottled water can cause all kinds of problems. And the problem is that the microplastics bring with them other chemicals. If it was just the microplastic by itself, but all these additives and things include phytoestrogens and pesticides and phenols and flame retardants and dioxins, and all kinds of things are being transported by those microplastics. That's why it's so worrisome. So be careful with them. So these BPAs, BPS, phthalates, forever chemicals, those things can carry all kinds of problems, especially those forever chemicals, the PFAS. Those things are used in things that avoid the transfer of water on paper. Like some paper cups, if you put water, somehow the plastic, the paper doesn't get wet. Have you noticed that? It's because it has this layer of chemicals, and those chemicals also have microplastics. Another worrisome study, you find it on my Twitter, it found that some Band-Aids, you know the things you put when you cut yourself, can have those forever chemicals. And that's not good, because your skin is literally open. So whatever you put in there, man, the thing is just going in with nothing to stop it. So this can have problems. This one very interesting study, exposure to bisphenol A, that BPA, from drinking canned beverages increases blood pressure. So blood pressure being affected by that. Drinking from aluminum cans lined with BPA containing resin increases the blood pressure within hours. This effect is immediate. And these phthalates, which makes the plastics more flexible, they tremendously disrupt the hormones and the reproductive system. And we theorize that that's going to have problems in the development of children. And here it is in this study, was very well done. You find it there on my Twitter about it. So this other one show that these phthalates can actually decrease the testosterone in males, which will affect the mood, which will affect the muscle mass of the male. And these forever chemicals, there's a reason why they call forever chemicals. The body has a hard time getting rid of these forever chemicals. They accumulate with time and time and time. Again, found on non-stick cookware and some packages, the papers that I told you that avoid the water to get there, and even some water-repelling clothes have these forever chemicals. In this study, it was found that those forever chemicals suppress the immune system, affect the thyroid, and could increase the risk for certain cancers. So how do microplastics and chemicals leach from plastics? Well, that's happened mostly by two things. One, when they are heated. That's why it's a really, really bad idea to put a container of plastic with food in the microwave. There's nothing wrong with the microwave. But when you put that plastic and the food, man, that's a really bad combination that causes a ton of those plastics to be released. And second thing, acidicity. If the food containing there is more acid, that also leaches a ton of those. So think about it, those takeout containers with hot food, not the best combination. That hot food, is releasing a ton of those microplastic. Plastic bottles in the sun, as we mentioned, that's going to release also a lot of them. And those things that can increase the heating, those things are going to be the problematic. So as I told you, many paper cups have those forever chemicals. And polycarbonate bottles also, these polycarbonate bottles, if you heat this, they release the BPA up to 55 times more. You get this ton of chemicals with that. And the thing is that many food containers can have that. So in this study, they were trying to see what happens when you microwave plastic containers. So microplastics that are released in 3 minutes, 4 million particles. I'm telling you, do not microwave on a plastic container because you release a ton of those microplastics. This other one, interesting. That popcorn that you put on the microwave, that one is very worrisome because, first of all, the bag has those forever chemicals to prevent the oil from coming out. So when you heat that stuff, all those chemicals are being transferred into the popcorn, and then you eat the popcorn, isn't it? So not the best source for popcorn. Rather, make your popcorn through some other source. Ideally, those air poppers are excellent. And this other one on the food packages, this one showing that half-life, how long they stay in the body, from 2 to 5 years. And the problem is that as they accumulate we're just starting to understand all the potential problems that that can give. And these ones, the ones that are inhaled, this one can trigger inflammation. Among the most common sources include polyester, nylon, and acrylic fibers. So those synthetic fibers, when you put them in the dryer, man, they release a ton of microplastics. And as we mentioned, tires, urban areas, and even shoes. The shoes, that's made of plastic, as you go through normal walking and so forth, that can release plastics. Now, it's nothing to worry unless you have a ton of people around you that are walking, then that starts getting a little bit worrisome. And this one, interesting study that was shown that small particles of plastic can actually be related to the risk of Alzheimer's disease. There's multiple articles. It's not only just one. In this interesting study, they found that every sample of lungs that the scientists tested, every single one of them had microplastics. So why do microplastics affect the lung? Well, the issue is that those things, as we mentioned, can cause inflammation and oxidative stress, increasing the risk of asthma, of COPD, and multiple other problems. So the problem is the immune system detects them, eats them, and then when it eats them, it irritates it, and that activates the inflammatory markers, and that inflammation can trigger many health problems in the body. So the highway for microplastics, the bloodstream, that's where all of them circulate. And this one, those phthalates, as we were mentioning, very much disrupting the hormones, especially the thyroid hormones. And this other one on pregnant females, in this study was found that pregnant females that had higher BPAs in their urine were more likely to give birth to boys who had slower growth later on. So it was affecting their physical and mental development. And this other one on male reproductive development, boys exposed to microplastic more likely to have, developmental problems like birth defects in their male organs. And this one also, ADHD and anxiety. Prenatal exposure to BPA is linked to higher risk of ADHD. And this other one showing that those microplastics can cross the blood-brain barrier, reaching the brain. And this other one showing that BPA can affect fertility. So the problem, because it affects the egg quality on the female. So here you can see in this study how not only the females get affected, but also the males. Especially worrisome because the semen is quite affected by those microplastics. And this one was showing that heart disease actually increases the risk by those BPAs. And this other one, hypertension. Those BPAs can also trigger hypertension. I've seen this case, people say, oh, doctor, I'm in a vegan diet, I'm doing exercise and so forth. But then we find out the microplastic exposure still is there. So we need to work on decreasing that microplastic exposure so that the blood pressure can come down. And this one, carbonated water many times can have those forever chemicals. Among the brands that had the most, Topo Chico had, the most. So that's something that you need to be worried when you buy the carbonated water, not to choose one that has higher levels. So in closing, what can we do? We saw, that these things are causing all kinds of issues in our bodies. As I show here, so you can decrease by trying to avoid as much as possible the bottled water. Use a reverse osmosis filter, as I told you. Decrease use of alcohol. Alcohol tends to release a ton of microplastics. Seafood, tea bags. The tea bags are plastic. You're putting them in hot water. What do we say? You know, plastic and hot water, not the best combination. And canned foods, as well as microwaving foods in plastics. And in your home for your AC and so forth, make sure you have a HEPA filter there. So reverse osmosis, one of the best things that you can do. In this study, it was shown that you can remove up to 99.9 of the microplastics if you have one of those reverse osmosis filters. A good investment to put in your home so that you can remove those microplastics. Another thing that you can do are those HEPA filters. So those HEPA filters actually capture like really, really small things, even vacuums, and you know, some of them have those HEPA filters. Good idea. Those vacuums, you know, can also release a ton of things as you are vacuuming. If they have the HEPA filters, they're able to capture the microplastics. And this one from shedding from the clothes. So as we mentioned, it's a better idea to opt for 100% natural fibers, such as linen, hemp, wool, zinc, bamboo, cotton, and so forth. You will decrease very much the exposure to microplastic by switching like that. And even receipts. This is a very interesting study, especially if your hands are greasy. So if you went to the restaurant that they serve all kinds of fatty food and your fingers are greasy, I would avoid touching that receipt, you know, because you actually can absorb quite a bit of that BPA like that. And also this sanitizer, if you use sanitizer and grab the receipt, also a ton of plastics will be absorbed. So another thing that we can do, we want to eat sulforaphane. Where do we find this? In cruciferous vegetables. That's why you need to eat a lot of broccoli, broccoli sprouts. They are loaded with this chemical. So as you can see, we can tackle the problem of microplastics by dealing with the sources. So now that you have become more aware where some of these sources are, as we consciously try to decrease our exposure, it is possible to decrease a lot of these microplastics. So thank you very much, and I hope to see you tomorrow morning.
Thank you very much for that presentation, Doctor, on microplastics. So what can we do to avoid microplastics? What type of drinking bottles should we use? Glass drinking bottles, or stainless steel. How about the cooking pans? What type of fry pans should we use? Stainless steel is the best, not Teflon. And don't heat our plastic containers in the microwave. Avoid that. We've got question and answers now. So if there are any questions you would like to ask, can I start with one?
Yep.
It's got nothing to do with the topics, but my sister asked me to ask you. Is fasting good for us to fast? And if so, how long should we fast for?
That's a good question. So yes, it is good for us. Actually, patients with autoimmune conditions actually benefit quite a bit from it. It's interesting that certain things that they eat, they trigger problems. So they stop eating and then the pain starts going away. So we want short fasting, 2 days, maximum 3 days. More than that, you need some professional supervision because you start messing around with your electrolytes and so forth. And personally, I don't like those long fastings because you end up destroying your muscle and multiple things inside your body. So yeah, not the best thing, those long type of fastings. Instead, what I do myself, I fast every day. I do 2 meals a day only. So I eat, I fast, I eat, I fast until the morning, and then I get the benefit of the eating and of the fasting at the same time.
Thank you. Anyone else has a question? Fred, do you have a question?
Sprouts, are they good substitutes for the real one, like broccoli sprouts for broccoli? Because I don't like eating broccoli by itself.
I wouldn't be eating them too much of them. Sprouts can sometimes generate some toxins and things in the process of the sprouting. Once in a while, if you eat them, that's okay, you know. But broccoli, you want to eat it both. There's a broccoli and some broccoli sprouts. If we're thinking about somebody that has been very much exposed to microplastics, then I would consider eating a little more increase of those broccoli sprouts for a short term, and then we switch, you know, to the once a week or so to eat those broccoli sprouts.
Thanks.
Thank you. Jordan?
Thank you, Doctor. Just by listening at all the presentations, I'm pretty sure that I have already taken all the tons and tons of microplastics in my body already, and I'm pretty sure all of us here.
Yes.
Because by the way that through the presentation that we hear, it's I'm pretty sure that I have tons and tons of microplastics in my body. So
Yes.
what are some practical ways or some processes, some ways that I can get rid of them from my body if it's already in my body?
That's right. Yeah, so we mentioned those cruciferous vegetables. So you are talking about, you know, all those Brussels sprouts, that broccoli, that cauliflower, that, they call it the ball, the big one. Yep. And also by exercising, and sauna could potentially help with some of that. But the good news is that as you become aware, now, you know, you're going to think about it twice, you know, and that actually starts decreasing your exposure to them, and the body, you know, starts to try to get rid of some of them.
Oh, a lot of questions.
Yes, hello. Yeah, broccoli. We miss Carrie and I. We use olive oil.
Yeah.
And broccoli. We mix together carrot, broccoli, cauliflower, and tofu, and brown rice or basmati rice. This way plan our diet.
That's right.
So we feel much better.
Yeah.
Particularly you're aging, right? You know.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Good choice. Good choice to increase your your cruciferous vegetables.
All right, thank you, Doctor. So I've seen one number, which is quite worrying, which is 0.5% of microplastic in the brain.
That's right.
Now, I would like to know like how the measurement is done and how accessible is it to civilians like us?
Yes. No, that's done post death. So yeah, you would have to be dead. So I can measure that, you know, because they literally need to, you know, go through the brain and sort them out and take the samples and this type of thing. So yeah, you don't do that while you're alive, you know. Yeah, so you don't want to do that unless you have a replacement brain, which we don't.
Since you already mentioned that you eat twice a day,
Yeah.
What are your times? And also, if you don't mind, what do you eat in a day?
That's plants. That part is answered. So yeah, usually around 7:30 or 8, and then my second meal around 3:30 or so. You know? That's usually my two meals that I eat. And what do I eat? I eat quite a variety of foods. You know, as I travel around the world, I've been picking up recipes and things, you know. So, man, one of my favorite ones is the Indian food, you know. That's one of my favorite ones. Middle Eastern food, also I love it. I've been eating quite a bit of that here with the falafels and so forth. And also Asian, I love Asian food, from the Thai food to the Chinese food and so forth. There's so many good options around. And of course, living in America, you know, you sometimes eat some American things, you know, so yeah, you know, veggie burgers and things like that. And because I'm originally from Mexico, also I love Mexican food. So yes, you know, there's also excellent foods. I was introducing my friends to some Mexican food today, and they love it, you know.
Thank you, doctor. Our vegetarian supplement nowadays, is there any presence of microplastic in now? Because a lot of our vegetarian supplement now, they said like rubbers. So in your study, have you find if there's presence of microplastic in our vegetarian supplement nowadays?
That's right. Yeah, well, it does decrease your exposure. You just need to be careful how they are packaged. Have you seen how sometimes they have this, they cut the melons and things and they put them in some plastic wrap and things like that? That could be, you know, a potential exposure to that. Sometimes the soil can be contaminated with microplastics, so you want to wash well your vegetables. That will actually release some of that microplastic exposure to them. And also sometimes long-term packaging, you know, they put them in some sort of plastic and then they ship them from a long place and so forth. More chance, you know, that microplastic may start transferring. So yeah, we just have to be wise, you know, when we purchase our foods. You know, now that you're aware, you know, you can be more heads up on certain things to avoid.
Thank you, Doctor. There's a question here. They want to know the benefits of garlic and onion.
That's right. Yep, it also has, they can actually potentially help with some of this microplastic exposure, and also those foods also decrease inflammation. So you get the two benefits, you know. Helps the body to get rid of some of those microplastics, and at the same time, you can actually decrease some of the inflammation that plastic may potentially be contributing to. That's why in my book, you're going to find there the G bombs. I don't know if you found that section there already on my book, in which I found the foods that you need to be eating on a regular basis, which are the G for what? Greens. B for beans and all the family. O for onions and garlics. M for mushrooms. The other B for berries, and the S for seeds. So yeah, there's a section there in my book. You can find it, and I talk about those G-bombs.
One last question. Lemon in the water.
That's right.
Is that good for us?
It's an excellent psychological thing to do, but yeah, some people, you know, swear by this thing that is good and so forth. Yeah, I would be drinking my water, just water, you know. And if, you know, you want to add a little bit there once in a while, it's okay, but I wouldn't be doing it on a regular basis.
One more question.
Does it matter where these foods, what environment they're grown in? Like we have, for example, garlic imported here from China.
That's right.
And some people have been very negative about that sort of, because of the environment it's grown in. Is that harmful?
Yeah, it depends, you know. Again, as I mentioned, sometimes these microplastics can accumulate in the ground. No, so it's a matter of knowing, you know, what's going on around that ground. Certain things, you know, may increase the exposure to these things. If it was next to a big, super busy road, all these tires, releasing all these microplastics, they end up settling down there and so forth. So that's why I was saying, you need to be just careful to make sure that you are washing correctly those vegetables. The probability that the microplastic goes inside the plant is actually quite low, unless it was like a super, super high level of microplastic and nanoplastic. So yeah, just make sure you wash your food very well.
Well, thank you very much for that, Doctor. We're very excited, all the information you have given us. We've got, because it's the last night, we've got 3 books to give away. So, first one is A Shock, Brother A Shock. You can pick one. Pick one. That one? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. Second book.
Still there. Right there.
Second book is Vika. Vika. You've got one on stress and one on health facts. That one? Okay, thank you. The last book for tonight, because we're going to miss the doctor. What are we going to do next week without the doctor? Ritua. Ritua. Is that twice? Well done. Thank you.
That's what happens when you're consistent in coming.
So we're back tomorrow morning. We're going to have 3 sessions tomorrow, one for Sabbath school, one for the divine service. Then we're going to have lunch, and after lunch, he's going to do his last presentation. So there'll be 3 topics, that's right?
That's right.
Yep. So we thank you once again, and we'll end up with a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you once again for the messages of tonight. Help us to implement them, incorporate them into our lives. Help us to be a blessing to others. So not only can we have healthy minds and bodies for ourselves, but we can be an example for other people. And because we know that we are the temple of God, and we should not profane it. We should keep it pure and holy. So please send us home tonight and send us back here. This is your Sabbath day. There's no better place to be than the house of God on your Sabbath day. So we thank you once again, and we ask this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Thank you very much, and good night.